7 months ago, Apple introduced the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and they sold it as a revolution, a next-generation phone with bleeding-edge technologies, incredible performance, unbelievable cameras. In this video, we are going to check which of those features have ended up being useful, which have ended up being disappointing, and finally, as a conclusion, if it is worth it to buy the iPhone 15 Pro Max. As always, there is a discount link for Amazon down below in the description, just in case you want to take a look. But anyways, that said, let's begin. Let's talk about the first improvement, which is also one of the most popular. For the first time in history, the iPhone 15 Pro Max used titanium on the side frames instead of stainless steel. Titanium is a super resistant and super lightweight material which has managed to reduce the weight by 20 grams, in addition to, on paper, being better at resisting bumps and falls. The only thing that worried people was that Apple covered this titanium with a layer of paint, which was quite easy to peel off when you scratched it with a cutter. Something that made a lot of us believe that we were going to have an iPhone 5 type situation all over again. But now, over 6 months later, it doesn't seem to be the case. I have the iPhone 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max. I've used both of them without a case for quite some time, and neither has the slightest sign of use on the side edges, even after a couple accidental drops. That being said, if you're thinking of buying it, I recommend going for white or natural titanium because the darker models get dirty just by looking at them. Another improvement on the iPhone 15 Pro Max is obviously its new processor, the A17 Pro, a chip that, according to Apple, was a revolution and represented a before and after for mobile phones. But when we put it to the test, compared to the A16 on the 14 Pro, we saw that it was practically the same with barely a 10% improvement. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is one of the fastest processors in the world and it works amazing. I've even been able to play Genshin Impact with high graphics at 120 FPS, something that a couple years ago was impossible to do on a phone. But of course, if you have an iPhone 14 Pro, a 14, or even a 13, you really won't notice that much difference in your daily activities if you buy the 15 Pro. And of course, I'm telling you this from experience after comparing them all to each other. The only good thing this processor has, compared to the previous ones, is that it allows you to play console games, such as Resident Evil or the new Assassin's Creed, something that no other phone can do at the moment I'm making this video. Although, well, I have to admit, I haven't really played any of these games. They work at a very low resolution with minimal graphics, and honestly, I think it is still much better to play on a portable console or a TV. Then, of course, we have to talk about the most striking change, which is that the iPhone 15 series is moving to USB-C from the old Lightning connector. Now, for the first time ever, we will be able to connect the iPhone to an external screen or to high-speed storage units. I've personally used this function a lot to record videos on this channel, or even sometimes to watch YouTube on a separate display. On top of this, I've also seen a lot of people online taking advantage of the feature, from video professionals who record to external drives, to gamers that connect the iPhone to an external controller and to a display to have a similar experience to what you can get on a PS5 or an Xbox. I think in the end it comes down to understanding what you're going to do with the phone and seeing if you would take advantage of the port. If you're not going to do any of the things I just mentioned, then it doesn't really matter if it's USB-C or Lightning. In any case, what caught the most attention in Apple's keynote was the new Action button. If you don't know it, it is a programmable button that can perform a range of different tasks when you press it. When it came out in September, everyone went crazy tinkering and trying all the different functionalities that were available. But after 7 months, and after all the hype flew away, we all realized it was not that big of a deal. The only thing they've done is actually going from a switch to a pressable button, which is nothing special. The volume buttons are pressable buttons that work the same way. And well, they have also unlocked the button so you can program it to do whatever you want. Something they could have done years ago with the mute switch if they had wanted to. And sure, it is an appreciated functionality to be able to customize the button to your liking. It's just that it is not that big of a deal. In my case, I have it set to toggle the flash for when I go to the bathroom at 2 in the morning, but also hitting the flash icon on the lock screen wouldn't be the end of the world. If you're thinking of buying an iPhone 15 Pro Max just for this, I recommend that you wait for the next model, which is already rumored to have another button specifically for the camera that will very likely be a bit more useful with touch sensitivity and sliding controls. Then, when it comes to the display, this year they have once again reduced the front frames, which surprisingly, Apple didn't really give that much importance in the keynote, but I feel like it's something that makes a huge impact in the user experience because the phone gets to be a little bit smaller, maintaining the same screen size, therefore being a bit more comfortable to use and a lot more futuristic and premium, which when you're paying $1,500 for a phone is kind of a must. And well, more along these lines, we also have to talk about the battery, another component that Apple barely mentioned back in September, but that has ended up giving us a pleasant improvement over the previous model. On one hand, because it lasts longer than the iPhone 14 Pro Max, something we could already see in September with the first comparisons, and on the other, because it has much better battery health, which is one of the things that worried me the most. With the previous generation, many users reported disastrous results after several months of use, which forced them to consider changing the battery not even a year after buying their brand new phone. Of course, I can't speak for everybody, but when it comes to my unit, after 6 months of continuous use, it remains at 100% battery health with over 100 charge cycles. But anyways, let's move on to the main dish. Let's talk about the cameras, the component that has probably disappointed me the most this year, because even though they are very good and give tremendous results in all kinds of situations, they are also incredibly similar to the ones on the previous model. We have an identical main camera, an identical ultra-wide camera, and an identical zoom camera. Well, except for that it's now a little bit more zoomy. Now it has a 5x instead of a 3x on the 14 Pro. But in terms of sensor size and optical quality, it is exactly the same. The only good thing I can say is that, sure, after testing the 5x telephoto for a couple months, I find it a bit more entertaining to use than the 3x, giving us very DSLR-like results. But that's it. That's the only real advantage over the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Every other improvement Apple yapped about in September is just fluff. The coating on the lenses to prevent reflections is practically not noticeable. The new 24 megapixel resolution for standard photos is only noticeable in very good lighting conditions and when you zoom in, and the ProRes logarithmic mode only makes sense for professionals who already have logarithmic workflows and that maybe want to use the iPhone as a portable B camera. Even with someone like me, I'm someone that makes videos professionally on YouTube and I haven't really used this feature other than to test it when I bought the phone in September. So imagine a normal person who doesn't work in the video industry. The only thing that surprised me when it comes to video is the slight improvement in standard video, MP4 video, that we've seen compared to the previous model. I don't really know what they've done here because, as I said, the quality of the cameras is the same, but I promise that this phone takes better video than the iPhone 14 Pro. It has better colors, it is smoother, maintaining a lot of sharpness, and it starts to look a lot like what we would see on a Sony mid-range APS-C camera. So, we now know all the features that Apple sold us in the presentation. We know what each one of them does, but now we also know how useful they actually are in our daily lives. The titanium frame is very well made and doesn't degrade over time, even though it gets incredibly dirty. The processor is practically the same as the one on the previous model, and the cameras are, except for the telephoto, exactly the same. The only real useful advantages are the action button, the possibility to play console games, and the USB-C port for the users who can take advantage of it. I honestly think that if you have an iPhone 14 Pro or 13 Pro, you should by no means update to the 15 Pro Max because there aren't that many differences to justify the price. But for those of you who have an iPhone 12 Pro or older, I believe it could be a good idea. As I said at the beginning of the video, you have a discount link for Amazon down below in the description just in case you want to buy it. And now that the video is about to end, I recommend you go take a look.